such a fucking idiot.
Hide the body.
I'm laugh crying. I'm not like scared crying.
Okay. We're just going to start fresh.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I don't remember.
Books and Brunch with Amber and Noel.
Welcome to the Books and Brunch podcast and video cast now. We also have a YouTube channel, just Books and Brunch. Last time we talked about House in the Pines, and we did a part 1, and we didn't get into any spoilers.
No, we had a consultation with our 17-year-old audio technician.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, he was probably like these middle-aged women.
He said, Amber, could you do me a favor and talk into the side of the microphone? And we were both like, oh.
Revelation. Yeah, so not all microphones are used the same way. Who knew?
Yeah.
And when I said who knew, he said I did. I was like, oh.
He's sassy. Shout out
Yeah.
to David King. Thanks, David.
Yeah. He said he'll charge us once we start making money.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm pretty sure
never.
if we call him again, he's charging us.
Yeah. So part 2, we'll actually get into, spoilers and stuff. We try to start out all of the podcasts talking about the book and the author's synopsis without giving spoilers, in case you're just listening to see or to hear, to figure out if you actually want to read the book. And then we reach a point and we say, okay, from now forward, we'll talk about the book with all the spoilers. And that way, if you've read the book, then you can see if you agree or disagree with us. So that's kind of where we're at now. We broke it up into 2.
Yep.
So I could fix my stuff.
So as far as the first part, we talked about like different themes in the book. We talked about Anna Reyes's life, kind of informing her work.
That's the author.
Yeah, yep. And again, if you didn't watch that one, but you've read the book, then no big deal. You'll just kind of miss some of the history of her. And this is her first book and how she got it.
It was fascinating. You should go back and watch it or listen to it.
Really, just can't miss it. You shouldn't miss it.
So, I was thinking about this last night, and the book is a thriller, or that's what it's classified as. And I know a lot of authors, they say when they're writing, they don't really choose what the genre is. Like the editor or the publisher will tell them, okay, it's this genre. And they're like, oh, I didn't know I was writing that genre. She actually knew because it had started off as her thesis. And so they told her it'd be better as a thriller. So she went back through and did the key points that turned something into a thriller.
Right.
But I didn't think it really, when I think of thriller, I didn't get that. Did you get that?
No, because, well, yes and no. So there's psychological thrillers, and then there's political thrillers or action. Like when I think of Pelican Brief, did you ever read that?
No, I saw the movie.
Yeah, okay, I didn't read it either, but I saw the movie with Julia Roberts.
I mean, yeah, I totally read it.
I think something like that follows the formula of a thriller, whereas I think more modern thrillers like Gone Girl, The Lovely Bones, ones where there's more, there's definitely a mystery, but there's this element of it might be just psychological, or maybe it's paranormal, or it's narrated in a unique way. Like The Lovely Bones, I would consider kind of like a thriller / mystery, but it's narrated by the dead victim, and that from the beginning, but it still kind of follows that. So anyways, I think it's just kind of we're moving into a kind of a nuanced way of genre fiction. It's expressing itself, but still being genre fiction.
I don't really read a lot of thrillers. I read Lovely Bones, and see, I wouldn't have said that one was a thriller either. I don't know what I would have called it. But Gone
There's going to
Girl,
be people being like, Lovely Bones wasn't a thriller, but I think it was. But
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't really know what I would consider that one. But yeah, I guess with this one, I didn't totally consider a thriller, because more of the question, I mean, you've got the question of Frank, did he do it? What did he do? How is he coming after her? But I think more of the questions were about her, the main character, and her sanity and what was going on. And so to me, that's, I guess, I guess it could maybe psychological thriller, you think? But that's the thing, like I haven't read a lot of those. That's not the genre I normally read.
Okay. Let's talk about what we think really worked for The House in the Pines, the thriller components of it, and what we think maybe worked for a different genre.
One thing, and I don't know about all the stuff you were saying, but one thing.
We'll just cut that out.
The one thing that made me so mad, and it didn't, like a lot of it tracked, like a lot of the stuff she wrote tracked, like it made sense, the dots connected, there weren't plot holes, but the one thing that I was like, I don't get it, was her fiance, like she disappears, and then he just doesn't talk to her for like days.
Right.
Like she's texting and calling, and he's like, I'm studying. It's like she was ill when she left. You knew something was wrong, and you're just
Right.
like not gonna talk to her for days. Like that part, like knowing his personality and like everything, like that part to me like seemed really weird, and it was almost like a like she didn't want to have to say if he had answered and talked to her, like would she have told him, and then would he have showed up? Like, you know what I'm saying? By her not talking to him, it just
Right.
isolated her more, and that kind of isolation and a problem, I guess, is, you know, indicative of thriller.
Maybe it should have been that he was calling her because he was concerned and she was avoiding the problem.
Or she just lie, like she always did to him. You know?
That's
I just
true,
thought
yeah.
that part was weird. I was like, every time they're like, oh, have you talked to him? And she's like, no. I'm like, Also, unpopular opinion, I kind of liked Frank. I'm like, imagine dating someone that could hypnotize you and make you think you're just like on a deserted island, that you're just on vacation, that
Yeah.
it's just all real. I'm like, I saw some missed chances there.
Like he could have used his powers for good if he was with someone he didn't
Yeah.
have to hide it from. Here's what I hated about Frank. And Ana Reyes talked about this in an interview that I listened to. She kind of deliberately created Frank to be a character who was a master manipulator, in the sense that Maya couldn't contact Frank. Frank had all the control. Like Frank could just show up at her door. Frank was the one driving. She was in Frank's car. He found her at work. Frank knew where she worked, where she lived, her phone number. She knew nothing about Frank. He kind of, on one hand, was like mysterious, right? We kind of like that dark, brooding, mysterious character, but then you don't realize like that is kind of sketchy. You know, and it is a power play to be like, yeah, you don't know when I'm going to pop up, but good luck finding me when you need me.
Did you ever read 50 Shades of Grey?
No.
So, but you like know the premise and
I know that it's like BDSM.
right, and so control and all of that. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of people said the things, you know, in that book, like spoiler, she wanted a job at this publishing house, and so he went and bought the publishing house and didn't tell her he had bought it, so then they would hire her, and he'd do stuff like that she didn't know. And then, you know, just like other more controlling things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so can you do a thriller where the main person is like super wealthy and hot, or would people not get scared?
I mean, I think you can. I mean, that's like kind of when you think of Dracula, like the original Dracula, he had that kind of mesmer charm.
But he like literally hypnotized them, right?
Dracula?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or, like
I mean,
charmed them.
yeah, he did charm him. I mean, similar to Frank, right?
Oh. Yeah.
So when I think of like Dracula is sometimes portrayed as like kind of good looking and then sometimes not. Like if you follow Castlevania, he's super hot. If you follow like different version, like Nosferatu, not hot. But I think that idea of like the charming vampire when they're hot, when it reads like Twilight. If you want it to be a thriller, your monster has to be ugly. I think that's the moral of the story.
Because she even talked about Frank and like how he wasn't like that attractive, but that she was
traditionally good looking.
Yeah. So I wonder if she actually even liked him, or if part of the hypnosis was that he convinced her she liked him.
No, it would be a really good idea if they adapted this to film, and when she's first telling the story and she's under Frank's charm, he's good looking, and then once the charm is broken, he's not.
Well, did you ever see I don't remember what it was called, but it was Jack Black and I want to say Gwyneth Paltrow, and he's like dating her and he sees Gwyneth Paltrow, but everybody else sees like obese woman. Mm-hmm. And he gets all confused because she throws her underwear at him and they land on him and he holds them up and they're like,
and they're huge,
a tent, and he's like, that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so we've talked about this in the past when we were reading Eileen. There are novels that are plot led and novels that are character led, right? And I would say that this is one where I did struggle to care about the characters. The friendship between Maya and Angela was, we're told that it's like this deep bond. She's never bonded to anyone like this before. That was her person. But I felt none of that in reading it. And I don't think that's like a discredit to the writing or the story. I just think it was more of that jumping in timeline. There's a lot more telling than showing because you've got a narrator looking back on the past and telling you, right, we were really close. So you don't get 17 chapters of them building this relationship where you've got crazy things happening and you just almost have to take the author's word that they were really close and that this death was really hard for her, which I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with that. I almost think that I prefer a character-driven story than a crazy plot.
Yeah, I liked the dynamic of her and the friend, and like I felt like I would have liked the book even more if the friend had been there. Like that's what I was saying. I was saying in part one, if they had done it chronologically instead of going back and forth. You know, and so that we're experiencing their friendship and then what happens to her and then hopping ahead to the future, not going back and forth. Because that was probably my favorite point because the friend like holds her accountable. Like, who is this guy? You're always with him. And so it's not just like the internal dialogue of, you know, her in withdrawal and trying to figure things out. You've got, I don't know. I liked having the friend there aspect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I do agree it was probably more about plot, which, like I said, I don't really read thriller. So is that kind of like typical of thriller? Is it's more plot driven?
It is, because the idea of like creating a page turner that's like a thriller is because like what's gonna happen next, not I'm so invested in this friendship or I'm so invested in this character that when they die I'm gonna fall apart.
I read like romances, and so I mean I read, you know, all kinds, but that's like one of my favorites. And the thing with like, you can have a book with romantic elements, like say it's like historical romance, right? So is it a historical book with romance, or is it a romantic book with history? And so they say the way to tell is if you take out all the romance stuff, if the story is still there and makes sense, then it's not actually a romance novel. But if it doesn't make any sense, then that's the main thing. It's a romance novel.
Or take out that big, like, crazy plot device, and do you still want to read it? Or, like, do you still care about these characters? I enjoy genre fiction for what it is. But I think that, we were talking about this earlier, is like, I think that there are a lot of authors who kind of play around with what it means to write within a certain genre. And I would say, like, Stephen King for me is one of them. For a really long time, I didn't read Stephen King because I thought that he was like lowbrow, and I had this kind of I don't know, like hang up that if I wasn't just reading like, I don't know, Kafka, I was, I don't know, but if I was like the idea that, yeah, if I was going to read something dark and disturbing, it should be like Cormac McCarthy, not Stephen King, because Stephen King's for everyone. But then you read Stephen King and you're like, oh no, this is a man who, first of all, has great driving plots, but he can create some characters that feel like real and not just plot drivers or what's the word? You know, have you heard the term a MacGuffin?
No. The girl in the freezer, or it's some take on that, and it's like the only reason the female is introduced is to kill her. Yeah. That's the only reason.
Yep. So like a MacGuffin would be if you have you've got two dudes sharing an apartment, and then they find this stray cat, and then they finally become friends because they adopt this cat. Like the cat serves to set and keep the plot in motion. So they're not doing anything. Nothing is happening in their lives. It kind of, anything that happens is revolved around the MacGuffin. So like the dead wife, Frank was a MacGuffin, right? He wasn't a real character. He was a plot device.
What?
Or maybe Angela was.
I would say the fiance.
I forget that Dan was even a character.
See?
Yeah.
Whenever you say MacGuffin, I think of like a muffin top, like you're combining the word muffin and gut.
See, I think of
that's my MacGuffin.
Who was that? Who was the drug dog that wore a trench coat?
Oh,
like the
McGruff?
Dick Tracy hat. Yeah,
McGruff.
That's who I say MacGuffin, but then I'm picturing McGruff. Things that you do feel like really worked in the novel, things that you really liked.
I liked the whole hypnotism aspect.
Yeah.
Because I thought there was something paranormal going on, that he would kill these girls and they would go live in this cabin that maybe existed on a different plane of existence, and that then, that's how he would keep them forever. And like way more complicated than what it actually was, but
right.
It was like such a simple answer, but I didn't guess that. And like even when she was blacking out for periods of time, like I still didn't get that. I just thought he had some sort of powers, and he was charming her, which I guess he was, but I wasn't thinking of it in the way he was doing it. So I thought that was really creative. And the whole like thing with his dad and his dad running all of that and doing it to him when he was a kid. See, now that, again, if she had, I've never written a book, so not trying to tell an author how to write a book, but the dad's story with the son and the mom, I feel like was glossed over, and that was way more thrillery to me. Like,
right, and that was like the bomb drop.
Yeah, and so if they had like actually went into some scenes, like more like dug deep into that, it would have been interesting. Like she could almost do a prequel, but you couldn't have had read House in the Pines to read it,
right?
But that would have been good.
Frank's story. People do like a origin story for a villain. Oh, who knows? Maybe she could.
Yeah. What worked for you and didn't?
I think that the story within the story, we kind of talked about like the meta narrative where she's writing her father's book. Well, she's reading her father's unfinished book. We then find out that she's going to finish it, but it's this driving force, right? It's this thing she keeps coming back to, like, why is this kind of metaphor of not remembering where you've been kind of standing out to her, and her almost like her weaving together her missing memories through reading her father's book about that. So I liked that. And I didn't think it was done like heavy-handed, where it's like, this book is about memory and where you come from. And then this book within the book is about, like.
Yeah, it was presented so subtly, I didn't even pick up on that. Until you said something, and I was like, you know what?
You know what? I think
you're onto something.
I always love thinking about the bigger picture, and I think that's why I don't read a ton of genre, but this is a perfect example of how genre fiction can lead you to these same conclusions. These seem like kind of like philosophical musings, if you will. Is that like, while I'm reading it, I was thinking about like, what does it mean to be from somewhere? What does it mean to go back there? Anna Ray, as we talked about, dealt with addiction and withdrawal, and she did a really fabulous job of creating a character who, like, I felt some of the shame, some of the impulse control stuff, that, like, there was that one part where she was trying to force herself to hold out to start drinking until after, I think, like 3 o'clock. It was just or maybe 5 o'clock. It was an arbitrary number, but she was just like lit. And I've felt that way before about certain things. Sometimes it's been alcohol, sometimes it's been other things, but it's been like, okay, I don't have a problem if I can wait until this time. But then all you do is just think about it until this time, and you're like, yeah, that's a problem. Did you ever read, this is also a thriller, did you read Girl on the Train?
No, that came out, it was like all of those, the Woman in the Window and Girl on the Train, and those all came out around the same time. I did read like half of The Woman in the Window.
Okay, I didn't read that one, but Girl on the Train was really good in a lot of ways, and I don't know why I didn't make this connection before. It, similarly to The House in the Pines, is that, so that woman has a drinking problem, and she drinks these canned gin and tonics. And she did such a good job of describing and like conveying this woman's like almost subconscious need for this thing, this craving, that I went out and bought like a 6-pack of canned gin and tonics while I was reading it, like, and was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Because it was just, I don't know. But she also, that character has some memory issues, and because of that, you don't know what's real and what's not real from her perspective. And I do think that The House in the Pines did that really well. She thinks that her ex-boyfriend is killing people to get to her or to send her a message, and she's at the center of it, and you're like, oh, sounds like narcissistic personality disorder, right?
I didn't doubt what she was saying because there was proof. Her friend did die and was in the house, and he was there, and there's police reports, and he talked to the police and said, yeah, she just dropped dead. And then the girl in the diner, there was video and people saw it. And so it wasn't like people were having to take her account of it. Like, there were witnesses. It did happen. And so that's why I didn't really doubt any of that. And then it was like, he was there both times. It is a really weird situation. So yeah, it does make sense. Like, it made sense. And so that's why, even though she was, sleep deprived and going through withdrawals and everything, like, it made sense to me. So I didn't ever think it was something else. Well, so like, I had thought it would be a good like tween thriller. Like a young, sure. like a young adult. Like, there's nothing. I don't think was there anything graphic, really?
No.
I don't feel like there was. Like,
yeah, it was super PG.
Yeah, and it's not like super scary, but it's like well written. And so I would think, like, if you have like a 13, 14, maybe 12-year-old that's like kind of reading above their age.
Yeah. Mommy, what's Klonopin?
That's why I was trying to think, like, what all is in that?
Just drug and alcohol.
There's no like sex or anything?
I don't think there's any sex.
Because I'm like, she has a fiance, talks about her with Frank. But yeah, I can't. Maybe that's why it was kind of a little
Fell
milk
flat for
toast
you 'cause
for
there was
me. Like, that's what was missing.
Is this episode over? I am dying. Do you see I'm sweating?
So,
Like my hair
Noelle
is stuck to my neck.
Noelle has moved into her house made of pine. They're not quite done building it, so they have no AC yet, and she is in the south.
You see this shine? I don't just have glowing skin. I am sweating my balls off.
All right, let's be done so you can go towel off.
Yeah, I'm going in the cold shower. Join us with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. That episode we'll hopefully do in a couple of days. Hopefully we'll have it out for next week. And
Yeah, now that we're over a bit Noelle's big move, my technical issues, we can get back on track.
Yep, we're both doing more work from home so that we can focus on making the podcast better. So give us feedback. If you have ideas of how, like, what you want out of a book podcast and you like us, give us that feedback. We want that.
Yes.
But don't tell me I'm too sweaty because that's not constructive criticism. All right, read, eat, and repeat.
Bye.
Books and Brunch with Amber and Noelle.
Oh, there's a bee on my toe.
What is happening? This is the cursed episode.
She's like, what are you
This
doing?
is the most mom podcast episode we've ever done. It's been like anything that can go wrong. My dog's barking.
Yes.
Your kids come home.
Dude, go to Walmart and get those little air conditioners.
I will. Are you safe in your home?